Let's bring in Chris DeGaulle.
He is Chris DeGaulle. Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle,
host of the Chris DeGaulle Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris DeGaulle.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
And host of the Chris DeGaulle Show.
Let's bring in Chris DeGaulle.
Please welcome Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle Podcast is presented by USMedicalPlan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at USMedicalPlan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. So grateful that you choose this show. We know that there are a gazillion different podcasts to choose from these days, but here we are in our almost fifth year of podcasting, and that you've continued to make ours a destination for news and comment just means more than I can say. So sincerely, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for turning other people onto this show. If you know folks that might enjoy it and maybe haven't listened to it yet, I hope you'll pass it along to them. I always appreciate your 5-star reviews and your written reviews at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And I would also just tell you, if you're not a Rumble subscriber, you can watch this show and listen to it that way on YouTube when they let us and they allow free speech, and on Rumble. Check that out there every day. So thanks a lot for being here, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. Times are not great economically. Money is tight. People are being stretched thin. And one of the ways, if you buy your own health insurance, that's a huge, huge outlay of money. John Ruhlman knows that. His team at U.S. Medical Plan knows that. And I would just tell you that if you have not shopped for health insurance lately, you really need to call John's team and let them get to work on finding better coverage for you. Yes, I said better, not just cheaper, but better too. 30 to 60% less expensive than what you're paying. And yes, at least equal to or better coverage. The thing is, you may be paying an exorbitant sum of money for your small business employees, for yourself as an individual. Maybe you're a senior on a fixed income and you buy that supplemental plan to help with your Medicare costs. Are you getting the best possible bang for your buck? Now, young people, if you don't have health insurance because money's tight, you're probably going to get the cheapest of all the rates out there. But what about the current insurance you have? Do you know what it actually covers? Do you know if you need it? If you have an emergency and you go to the hospital, you have surgery, or you're extended sick or something like that, God forbid, what does it cover? Let John do some homework for you for a couple of minutes. Let him work with his network of private insurers to find you a better rate and better coverage. The last thing any of us wants is to be stuck with subpar insurance when we need it. And if you can get it for cheaper too, like 30 to 60% less, isn't that worth a couple of minutes of your time? It's John Ruhlman and his team at USMedicalPlan.com. That's USMedicalPlan.com or 877-410-4321.
I didn't even realize that Cacklebritches was driving around town yesterday ahead of, I remember I told you yesterday that I saw the box truck driving around town with the digital signage. It was just a picture of the Husk and Cacklebritches smiling and waving, and it said, "We stand for reproductive rights," or some such thing. And I didn't understand that. I didn't know why a paid-for truck was driving around town with that on its sides on digital display, and it turns out that Cacklebritches was in fact visiting. Did you know that, or did we just not care? Because I didn't care. I mean, even if you'd told me, I didn't care, but I didn't know. Why was she here? Obviously to talk about lady parts and fallopian tubes, and hey, gals, remember, if you get pregnant, we just want you to know we're the party that totally supports you killing it. That's their party platform, I guess, going into 2024, so that's what they were here to tout, right?
It was, yeah. And I honestly didn't know until late yesterday. Even the DNC didn't even tip me off.
Yeah, what a strange... I mean, typically there's a lot of press around that, although I kind of get the sense they're not particularly excited about telling people ahead of time that she's coming. It always kind of feels like maybe she goes places, does a thing, and if it goes well, they tell people. If not, they figure we're going to hear about it anyway because inevitably she's going to say something stupid. Nobody really trumpets the fact that she goes anywhere. All right, so that's that. Nothing more newsworthy of her visit than, hey, ladies, we're all for abortion. That was the reason for it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Didn't have anything to say about crime in Philadelphia. Didn't have anything to say about the economy, as far as you can read or tell.
She was with Cheryl Lee Ralph from Abbott Elementary, so the star power, of course.
Sure.
Yes.
So she got a celebrity from a show.
Uh-huh.
Did she? I wonder if she talked about education. Did she talk about education since, Abbott Elementary is all about school? Wonder if she's talking about education, Fast Eddie, you suppose?
I don't know. It just says bans off our bodies. I'm looking.
How weird. So, of everything going on in the country today, that's all she came to Philadelphia? No, Philadelphians aren't talking about or concerned about anything but abortion. At least according to her agenda. All right. Well, that's good to know. Boy, John Fetterman. I got to say, she probably wouldn't have wanted to address the question that I would have loved to have asked her. Hey, one of the biggest stars of your party, John Fetterman, the Democrat senator from Pennsylvania, he's very, very unhappy with your administration's decision to withhold arms from Israel. Do you have anything to say about that? Biden says he will stop sending bombs and artillery shells to Israel if they launch major invasion of Rafah. John Fetterman's tweet in response to this yesterday. Hard disagree and deeply disappointing. Madam Vice President, what say you about pissing off both sides? Might be a question I'd ask if I were a member of the media. I mean, to be honest, I don't know that any members of the media were allowed to ask her any questions. But Fetterman continues to double down on this thing. This is the big story. You know, our buddy Ed Morrissey has been writing about this. They've been writing about it at the Wall Street Journal. Stephen Miller over there, formerly of the New York Times, pausing congressionally approved weapons to an international ally for domestic political purposes was an impeachable offense 5 years ago. That has happened. They all know it. They all know what's happening. Now pay attention to why it's not being covered the exact same way. This is the major story of the day yesterday, is my point. And the supposed number 2 figure in United States government, the second in line to the presidency, the woman that by all accounts you'd have to give the presidency, if in fact the husk is not the guy to run, comes to Philadelphia yesterday. One of the major, by television ranking, it is the fourth, I still believe it is, the 4th largest city in the country by television ranking. I might be wrong on that, or maybe it's 8th. Well, in radio, I know it's 8th. So I don't know if it's television, if it's bigger. Anyway, the point is, a population of over 4 million people-ish, last time I looked. It's a big, big media market, not far from Washington, D.C., and not far from New York City. And the second in command comes to town on the day her boss says they will withhold weapons from Israel if they continue to go to war with Islamists. That is a really significant story, ladies and gentlemen, big time. And so she gets to sneak in and talk about abortion and leave. Can you imagine how she'd answer that if she was asked? In case you missed the story, President Biden vowing to withdraw or withhold, I should say, weapons from Israel if the Jewish state goes forward with its invasion of Rafah, Hamas's last stronghold in Gaza. Now, gosh, why would that be? I don't know. It just doesn't it feel like Obama's lurking in the background of this kind of thing? Why wouldn't you want to go in and finish the job in Rafah? Just 2 days ago, did he not give a powerful speech on Holocaust Remembrance Day talking about the disgrace, the abhorrent, objectionable behavior of anti-Jewish, anti-Semitism in this country and anywhere else, and that it should be rooted out wherever it's found? Did he not? I thought he gave a forceful, powerful... Remember, all the campus protests are over, at least we're told, even though there was pepper spray and everything this week at the campus of George Washington University. You didn't hear about that anymore. It's all gone away now. All the pro-Palestinian, all the pro-Hamas protesters, they're still on college campuses. And by the way, I've got a delightful story related to that later, but that's for later. So these protests have not gone away. The problem is, of course, for the American left, they've not gone away, and the media covered them amply last week, and the memo went out as we've covered. Stop talking about it. So they're pretending they're not happening anymore. And Biden and the folks there in the White House were told, we got a real problem. Polling says the country is still very much with Israel. They really are really alarmed about this occupying of college campuses thing. They're very alarmed at the anti-Semitism being displayed on these campuses. Call off Soros. Call off the paid-for tents. Call this off. This is too radical, and it's backfiring bad. which explains why the Husk went out this week and gave... Can we go back to a little of the Husks? I think we had a clip or two of that. The Husks' Holocaust Remembrance Day comments.
Now, here we are, not 75 years later, but just 7.5 months later, and people are already forgetting. They're already forgetting that Hamas unleashed this terror. It was Hamas that brutalized Israelis. It was Hamas who took and continues to hold hostages. I have not forgotten, nor have you, and we will not forget.
Oh, yeah. Yay, applause, applause. Now, when did he give that speech? Maybe my memory's faulty. Wasn't that 48 hours ago?
Yeah, on Tuesday, yeah.
Huh. So, and it's just Thursday, right? I haven't hit my head.
No, Thursday, yeah.
Okay, are all of our attention spans that short? And I'm asking rhetorically, not yours, not mine, not this audience, of course, but all of the mainstream media who's, just salivating over Biden's threat to withhold weaponry. Did they not hear this speech? Did they not hear that clip? That just happened. I mean, he literally in 24 hours said that and then said, if Israel goes any further in destroying Hamas, I'll withhold weapons. Now, how do you square that circle? Sincere question. And I'm asking, any creative leftist want to take this one? I would love to hear your most inventive response to how do you say, I have not forgotten that in just 7 months ago, innocent Israelis were slaughtered and kidnapped. Hamas started this, and I have not forgotten that. How do you say that and then 24 hours later say, Israel, if you don't leave Hamas alone and stop what you're doing, stop your incursion into Rafah, we will hold weaponry from you. Withhold weaponry. How do you say it? How does that even make sense? What sane member of any media outlet can watch this in a 24-hour span and justify it, explain it away, spin it? Your most creative attempt at it, I'd welcome. Because it's intellectually incongruous. It doesn't even matter what you believe about Israel. That doesn't make any sense. Within 24 hours? At least they'd been taking sort of an agnostic point of view on it and sort of more or less saying, well, if they get too aggressive, we don't like that. They've been kind of consistent. And then they came out with this phony Holocaust Remembrance Day speech. So one has to look at the body of their work and conclude only one thing. They've always been driven by radical Muslim ideology. They've always been driven by anti-Semitism. I believe that's true. And, we were kind of getting into this week with Seb's visit. Whenever people say who's really behind the Biden administration and I say Obama, Seb always quibbles with that. He says, no, it's not Obama. And Seb means literally. And I guess I don't mean literally. I don't mean that Barack Obama is literally sitting in the Oval Office. Barack Obama doesn't have to literally be doing anything. Barack Obama has instituted over 20 years inside the federal government an army of Marxist organizers who do his bidding. He has re-envisioned American governance in his image. He has cast a new direction for American governance. He has populated the government with people who see the world just like him, if not even more radically. So when we say Barack Obama is running the Biden administration, not literally, but I do believe he can pick up a phone and tell somebody like Susan Rice, for instance, or Merrick Garland. I do believe people like Eric Holder, the former attorney general, very much still run and have influence in the Justice Department, for instance. I do believe with one phone call, Barack Obama can get anything accomplished inside official Washington without lifting a finger or physically traveling anywhere himself. Of course, I don't mean literally. But this smacks of Barack Obama. This policy with Israel has to be drafted by an anti-Semite. There's no other way around it, and we know Barack Obama is. From Joel Pollack over at Breitbart, what Biden doesn't get is that the Israelis will fight house to house and hand to hand to destroy Hamas. It will take longer without bombs and artillery, but Israelis are not going to accept defeat or live in constant fear. He doesn't know how to win. Israel can't afford to lose. Well said, and that's exactly right. Benjamin Netanyahu is not going to say, well, I guess we won't go into Rafah then if the Husk is going to withhold weapons. Stephen Miller's point is exactly right. This is congressionally approved weaponry. You know, it used to matter that the legislature, our elected representatives, the House of Representatives, passes legislation to aid Israel. And then he gets to threaten and say, nope, we're just not going to aid you. It's impeachable, Stephen Miller believes. I think that would be true. From the Wall Street Journal editorial board, call it what it is, a U.S. arms embargo against Israel. That's the astonishing story this week as the Biden administration confirms it's blocking the delivery of weapons to its main ally in the Middle East. No matter how fiercely the president trumpets his ironclad support of Israel, his denial of weapons now puts the Jewish state in danger. Israel is at war, assaulted on multiple fronts. Denying it U.S. arms is an invitation to enemies to take full advantage in hostage talks and on the battlefield. It hasn't been 4 weeks since Iran attacked Israel directly, in the largest drone attack in history, plus 150 or so ballistic and cruise missiles. Hezbollah fires dozens of rockets each day, depopulating the north of Israel for 7 months and counting. The terrorist group and its Iranian controllers could decide at any time to precipitate an even larger war. Would it then be okay for Israel to have bombs? Israel needs to be ready now, and its enemies need to know the U.S. stands by it. That's why Congress approved military aid to Israel in April by a vote of 79 to 18 in the Senate and 366 to 58 in the House. The overwhelming votes, including a majority of both parties, marked an important defeat for the anti-Israel left. Failing in its efforts to disarm Israel, the left lost. And now Mr. Biden is endorsing that policy. That's from the Wall Street Journal editorial board. It's astonishing. I run out of creative words to describe what's going on. With the lawfare being waged against the former president, the current president disarming an ally after a sneak attack from the most heinous enemy the world knows, Islamic fundamentalists. This is, folks, any perceived insurrection or January 6th, this is 10 times worse. All of this is 10 times worse. This is relative to treason. If ever you're going to throw the treason word around, this is it, as far as I'm concerned. And then, of course, that goes without bringing up the fascistic way in which they used social media to throw an election. So, from Axios, Biden faces internal Democrat blowback over paused Israeli weapons sales. The internal party dissent adds to the furious broadsides Republican lawmakers have levied at the president. Mitch McConnell and Mike Johnson sent Biden a letter yesterday morning demanding details about the decision by the end of the week. The pause comes as Israel has begun moving into Rafah despite a months-long effort by Biden to prevent such an assault, writes Axios. Representative Richie Torres, a Democrat from New York, who said on X, the move makes a mockery of our credibility as an ally. And he had even more strident criticism for the president in a brief Capitol Hill interview yesterday. This is a Democrat, mind you now. He said, I suspect it's pandering to the far left. It looks like election year politics was driving it. That's my impression, he added. Gee, you suppose? It's a Democrat from New York, ladies and gentlemen. A Democrat from New York. Need I remind you, I'll just throw out there again for good measure. Where is Donald Trump being persecuted right now? Also New York. Where did Kathy Hochul just say blacks don't know what a computer is? New York. I got to say, I'm not making predictions here, but I've got a very strange feeling about New York. Something is brewing up there. When one of the biggest Jewish populations in the country is being sold out by this administration, when blacks are being insulted and degraded by this administration, when 2 back-to-back reprobate governors have failed, you got a mayor that's letting the major metropolitan city in the state fall into anarchy. I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic here, but how degraded does New York have to become before they say, maybe we'll try something else? Torres wasn't the only Democrat to speak out against the pause. Lois Frankel, Democrat, Florida, told Axios Israel is surrounded by danger. They need the tools to defend themselves, and the U.S. should fulfill our obligation. Jared Moskowitz, Florida, said the move is clearly geared towards sending Israel a message about their use of force, but Hamas is also getting the message, and that means the war is going to go on. And then, of course, Fetterman, who I just read you. I strenuously disagree. We have to stand with our key ally throughout all of this. I can't offer you any insights here other than this is driven by Barack Obama's hatred for Israel and Barack Obama's radical allies who still run official Washington. They told the Husk, okay, go out there and save face and give your little Holocaust speech. But then we're going to reverse course immediately, 24 hours later, and threaten to take all weaponry from Israel to finish the job, from the people that murdered them. He may as well have not... To do this 24 hours after the Holocaust speech, he may as well have just extended the bird on the Holocaust Remembrance Day and said, I'm not coming. Why not? It's the same effect. This totally negates the speech he gave. Anybody who was in that audience applauding him, oh, yes, yes, yes. It's meaningless now. It's rendered moot. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying weapons. I hope Benjamin Netanyahu issues a statement today that says, I don't need your stinking weapons. We're taking out these cockroaches with or without you. I don't know how more clear I have to make it. I don't ask permission to defend my people. I stomp our enemy wherever they're found, and if you're not going to help me, fine, we'll go at it alone. We don't need you, is what I suspect he'll say. And why shouldn't they? That's the thing. Israel can do this. You know, when we continue to shovel money into Ukraine, we had this discussion at the cigar night. What does a win look like in Ukraine? Nobody can define it. Nobody knows. Can they? Do they have the capability? It's really in doubt. Most people don't believe Ukraine can. Ain't nobody doubts Israel has the stuff to get it done. And rather than aid the country in stomping out what is absolutely and without debate the single greatest threat the globe faces, and certainly American and Israeli citizens, Jewish and Christian citizens, I'd say any non-Muslim, certainly any non-Islamist, all of us, the greatest single threat we face, I really believe as a collective, are radical Islamists. We still do. What's it been, 20 years since the hijacking of planes? The box trucks, the slit throats. Do I have to remind you of this stuff? What they're willing to do? Kaboom? Pressure cookers? Boston Marathon? These people aren't the surgeons that Chinese are. The Chinese strategically buying up our land, invading our universities. These people just look for an opportunity to go kaboom because they believe they'll be rewarded by 72 virgins in heaven. They are the single greatest threat to every one of us. And Israel is poised to at least stomp out a huge, huge branch of them wherever they're found. You talk about free Palestine, free the Palestinians. Any thinking person knows that living under something like that is not free, is not freedom. It's repression of the highest order. It's a theocracy. They're anti-gay, they're anti-woman. They need to be destroyed. They need to be erased from the planet wherever they're found. And we should help Israel very clearly. There's no debate about it. It can't be debated. If you do debate it, you're either an Islamist Or you're so passionately invested in being an anti-Semite, you look past the fact that they'd slit your throat in cold blood just to get their virgins. You're a stone cold moron if you don't see it. I mean, there is no other way to see it. It's not a debate. And I agree with Stephen Miller. This is an impeachable offense. This is a president who has said, I'm ignoring the congressional vote. I will withhold what duly elected representatives of the people said we're to do. I'm ignoring it. Very insurrection-y, it sounds to me. Excellence in dentistry. That's what you're going to get at Williamsburg Dental. My friend Bob Spinato is back on the phone. He's in Broomall, just off the Blue Route. And with 2 new associates, now you can expand and offer more hours, maybe evening hours, possibly weekends, Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that I told them from early on when they started with me was the value of not only their own time, but other people's times. And they run on a similar schedule that I do. If you've got a 1 o'clock appointment, you're in their chair at 1 o'clock. And it's something that across the board at Williamsburg Dental, we really pride ourselves on, whether it's an appointment with the hygienist or whether it's an appointment with one of our doctors. The other thing is we now have some expanded hours in the evenings, and even there's some discussion about opening again on some Saturdays for services.
Yeah, but not you. You're fishing. You're not kidding anybody. It's not you going to be working on Saturday. Come on,
Well, I'm in my 33rd year, and it should be the young guns.
That's so right. You've earned it. You've earned it.
I feel like I have. Thank you.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. I don't know what this means. The New York Times and CNN are still talking about RFK Jr.'s brainworm. What is that? There is nothing about that story that interests me, and they are on it day 2. They've got TikTok footage of one of the Kennedy relatives going off about his uncle having a brainworm, and they're saying maybe that explains why he's doing this to their beloved Democrat Party, blah, 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 blah. RFK Jr. says worm got into his brain and ate part of it, reads the Chiron this morning at CNN. Is that... Are you interested in that story? Is there something about that I'm missing?
No, but I think I go the Stegall route on this because CNN just did a 5-minute segment with Sanjay Gupta last night. You know, remember the good doctor from COVID?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. So I'm thinking, like, this is it. This is the media's pivot. I'm just like, this is the Stegall moment. And I'm like, here we go. So you got the family coming out against him last week, right? The full family.
Yep.
Now the brain worm in the New York Times of all places. And now the media, MSNBC, CNN, running with this story. So this is to discredit him, I think.
Well, you know, given the way they are running away from the still ongoing campus protest coverage and the new polling data that they have really, really been frightened of. We've seen the polling come out of CNN and others. ABC had the back-to-back polls that came out almost, I think, within 24 hours of each other that said issue by issue, particularly on issues of the economy, Trump is huge double-digit leads over Biden. And so at this point, if you believe it's close, and almost anybody, regardless of their partisanship, believes this is going to be razor thin, you cannot afford a guy like RFK Jr. out there running around. Neither of these campaigns can afford him. But everybody knows and everybody believes that there are more Democrats looking at him than there are Republicans. And so, yeah, not talking about the campus protests, doing the Holocaust Memorial Day speech, then threatening Israel 24 hours later, and the RFK brainworm, over there, look over there, look over there, look over there, is basically what we're living through this week, after a week of real chaos for them last week. Anyway, fewer Americans see climate change as a very serious problem, as gas is, $3.73 a gallon, I believe, as I pumped it yesterday at Wawa?
Yeah.
And that's why. It's $3.73 because we're not making it ourselves. We were awash in it when Donald Trump was president. We don't have it now. We've drained our strategic petroleum reserve. They continue to insist that we shut down coal-fired power plants, which is the cheapest available, plentiful, powerful source of our own energy that we could provide, and they're shutting those down systemically. on a frail grid, and yet now here from The Hill, no less, fewer Americans today even see climate change as a serious problem, according to a new survey released this week from Monmouth. A 10-point decline, folks. It's not even flat. It is a 10-point decline in Americans who say climate change is a very serious problem, falling from 56% in 2021. So less than half of us now, in just 3 years, in the same poll, think this is a deal. The decline was less steep overall, 66% describing climate change as a problem. That's still down from 2021. Patrick Murray, director of the independent Monmouth University Polling Institute, attributed this trend to the decline in urgency among Americans. That means we got to ratchet up the urgency. We're not screaming loudly enough, I guess. Most Americans continue to believe climate change is real, he assures everyone here in the story. But the difference is, in these latest polls, it's a decline in the sense of urgency around the issue. Maybe humility. Maybe. Is it possible that the American public is getting wise to the fact that we, like, the Incans and the Mayans and the Aztecs cannot offer up sacrificial actions to control the planet's temperature? Because that is what we're living. I mean, really, when you back away and think about it, if you have any understanding of the way tribes used to offer up sacrifices to please their gods, we're living the political equivalent of this with the Green New Deal, with our stupid plug-in cars. It's nothing different. It's like offering goats up on the altar. The decline in urgency can be seen most acutely among, are you ready for this? Get this. You're not going to believe it. You want to guess which demographic, according to this poll, is the least alarmed by it? This is astounding. Again, I'm reading from The Hill and Monmouth University, so if you take issue with this or you say, that's just some conservative talking point, take it up with Monmouth and The Hill. This poll says this urgency has declined the most among young people. Young people. 18 to 34-year-olds. There was a 17-point drop in the last 3 years, calling climate change a very serious problem. 67% in this age group said climate change was a very serious problem just 3 years ago. And the trend extends to not just Republicans. It's not just conservatives. It's Democrats, too. Everything about the data that I'm seeing and the behavior that we're seeing, the pushback last week from the frat bros on the flag thing, I've told you this and told you this. The canary in the coal mine to me has been watching my teenage sons growing up in my home, inviting their buddies over. I have seen this quiet revolution going on among young men in particular. I think young women are becoming increasingly more conservative, too, based on this LGBTQ dudes in locker room anti-Title IX push the left is doing. I think in time, the young ladies will catch up to the young men, but we're in the midst of a young male revolution in this country, and that's across all demographics. I'm not just talking about young whites. I'm talking about young Hispanics, young blacks. I think the young men across the board, regardless of skin color, in this country are waking up. They know they've been played. This is a devastating... This one may be even more devastating than the presidential opinion polls. If they're losing the propaganda war, Al Gore's polar bears drowning, if they're losing that crap, you got a steady diet of that. I mean, what are you? You're in your 30s, Fast Eddie. When you were in school... You were smack in the middle of the propaganda war with Al Gore and the polar bears drowning and all that.
So to give you context, it started with Al Gore. My college career ended with Barack Obama. So I was 04 to 08. That was my years in college.
Uh-huh.
We had to watch An Inconvenient Truth. I had to do a project on it. Like I had to take the data and pretty much say why it was correct and try to refute it. We were in the middle of all of it. Yes,
and
absolutely.
You went to Catholic high school.
I did.
Was that pushed in Catholic high school, or not so much?
It was not. It was not pushed.
But by the time you got to college, it was.
Yes.
Is that because most Catholic schools, I'm not saying all, I certainly wouldn't say all, because I'm sure you can find it, but do you think at least the people that ran your school, do you think they had this crazy notion that maybe we don't control the weather like we're God? Is that possible? Is that maybe why you weren't soaking in climate change rhetoric when you were in Catholic school? In what, the early 2000s?
In high school, yeah. Early 2004, yeah.
I mean, because in public school, you were soaking in it, for sure. But you weren't in Catholic school. Is that because they had this crazy idea God controls the weather?
Yeah, we had a fear of God. You know, we had Mass first Friday. We had, a lot of things.
Yeah. 77% of Democrats described climate change as a very serious problem. That's down 8 points from 3 years ago, believe it or not. And just 13% of Republicans say climate change is a very serious problem, down 21%. My kids, for instance, it's not that they're... I was sitting at dinner a couple of weeks ago with my boys, and one of them was just so excited about the day he could buy himself a plug-in car. And you may not believe this about me, but I really try hard to hold my tongue around the family dinner table. I don't, it's not like I throw my napkin down and pound my fist. I get out what I need to say here. And so generally when I'm in mixed company, even with my family, I generally find if we wade into anything remotely political, I just start slowly sipping on a beverage and listen. I almost never speak because I feel my record's pretty clear. Anybody wants to access it, there's hours and hours and hours of documented evidence of what I think about just about everything. You can find it. So I don't feel inclined to pipe up much. But I heard my son just espousing how cool he thought that, and I can't even believe this, he thinks the plug-in truck, Elon's Tesla truck, have you seen that godforsaken monstrosity?
For the first time, I saw one yesterday, yeah.
He thinks it's just the coolest thing. And I said, I finally couldn't resist. I go, look, I'm not, whatever. You want to buy a plug-in car, that's fine. I said, but have you walked out where we're going as a culture with our energy supply? He said, well, what do you mean? Why don't you like them? I said, no, it's not about whether I like plug-in cars or not. It's not about whether you should go get one or not. Go get one. Get a fleet of them if you want. I'd just like you to consider what happens when there's nothing to plug into. What do you do when there's no power supply? Do you understand where the electricity is coming from to power these cool trucks you're excited to plug in? What's the hauling? I saw a story yesterday I didn't get to that says they've been doing a study on over-the-road truckers and their plug-in tractor trailers, which I guess there are a few now. I guess there's some plug-in, instead of diesel over-the-road guys, there's now some plug-in over-the-road guys. And guess what they're finding? They got to sit around waiting for the charge on their trucks. Now, if there's one thing we know about truckers in this country, if anything, there have been lawsuits over the years and administrative guidelines to force them to do what? Sleep. Because in the trucking industry, the one thing that you don't do is wait around. Deadlines. Why are there, when you see these accidents, these balls of flame going up on the highway, it's because these guys drive like maniacs, a lot of them. I don't mean any disrespect. I know a lot of you are truckers in this audience. Most of you are very, very cautious. But you're in a hurry. There's pressure. There are deadlines in trucking. Everybody needs their stuff yesterday. And now it's federally, I believe, mandated that you pull over for a certain period of time after you've logged so many hours and sleep. If you didn't, companies would have these truckers running as fast as they can. So guess what they find with plug-in trucks? They got to sit around and wait for a charge, and they don't go that far on a charge versus your conventional internal combustion engine and a diesel truck. It's a step backwards. And so I was explaining to my son, this is regressive. Everything you do, your Xbox, your iPhone, you're excited about a plug-in car, it all relies on a powerful energy grid, son. And the politics of the American left are killing our electrical production. And if you don't have it, you're not going anywhere. And you're not making phone calls. And you're not playing Xbox. This is the single biggest threat outside of our throats being slit by Islamists. This is the single greatest threat, I think, that faces us. The deterioration of our energy grid, our inability to produce heat and air conditioning for ourselves in extreme temperatures. specifically heat. The assault on our energy grid, and I think young people are getting wise to it. Their lives are all electric, boogie, oogie, oogie. And so I think they're beginning to realize it's expensive. My son is paying his first electric bill. He's got himself a studio apartment now. He got his first electric bill. He's trying to get on level pay. And he's been waiting for it to even out a little bit. He's ticked off because he's now getting the energy bill for the first time and trying to figure out, it's up, it's down. He's very, very mindful of what he's consuming. I said, just point of fact here, if electricity were reasonable, would you be as mindful as where the thermostat is set at all the time? He said, well, no, but you got to worry about it because I don't want the bill to go through the roof. I said, I know, and that's where they've put us. And that is the power of people in control of our electric production in this country. Every single decision you make, what time of day you're going to wash your clothes or start the dishwasher, they want to control that. I'd like to believe, and again, maybe this is Pollyanna, I'm being maybe overly optimistic. I'd like to believe young people are starting to realize that those in official Washington and those with the levers of power can control them without passing a bit of legislation through the electric grid. Their entire existence is becoming electronic. And official Washington having total control over its production or lack of production means their ability to communicate, their ability to move freely, all gone. And by the way, if you have any lived experience at all, I think you begin to wake up and realize, number one, you don't control the weather. Extreme weather events sometimes happen a lot. Sometimes we go years without them happening at all. You go through several years without major hurricanes or tornadoes, and you go, hey, maybe they sold us a bunch of garbage in that propaganda film we watched in high school. Fewer Americans see climate change as a serious problem. All the data points show that the American left is falling apart. The propaganda war that they have been waging on us for a very, very long time seems to be unraveling. I don't want everybody getting mad at me if this doesn't work out in November. I'm just saying right now, boy, on every front, it looks like it's unraveling. At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle we hold sacred, and that's free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish, allowing ideas to flourish, debates to ignite, and progress to be made. Without it, our pursuit of liberty, our ability to challenge, or our capacity to innovate, it would be really constrained. Now, in today's digital age, the very platform that should democratize information is being allowed to narrow the spectrum of ideas we're exposed to. Really important discussions about our wealth, our rights, our future, systemically silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations that are really crucial to your financial independence and your security. And that's where the company Wealth Protection Research steps in. They're armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. I want to be clear about that. They're defenders of free speech. They're committed to giving a voice to the silenced. In an era where dialogues about retirement, investments, economic freedoms are increasingly censored, Wealth Protection Research is focused on ensuring that diverse, controversial, and revolutionary ideas also get a platform. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts through leaders and thought leaders, trailblazers, all who've been pushed to the margins by mainstream media and tech platforms like Facebook and Google. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, offering fresh, often contrarian perspectives on protecting and growing your wealth, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of this coming election. By spotlighting these thinkers, people like Jim Rickards or Porter Stansberry, Wealth Protection Research is not just sharing financial advice, they're fostering a movement toward a more open, informed, and free society. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report, and it's a completely free report. It highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election, and it also contains ideas the mainstream media doesn't want to touch. Listeners to this show can get this whole thing completely free if you text the word ideas to 76626. Just text ideas to 76626, and if you do that today, you're also going to get a free gold investment kit from Wealth Protection Research. And the sponsor of that is Augusta Precious Metals, by the way, and we appreciate that. So just text ideas to 76626. 76626. If you're like me and you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, act now. Text ideas to 76626. Claim your free copy of this 2024 election report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told. We believe that here. Here are the ideas that establishment folks can't handle and don't think you can handle. Take control of your own financial destiny. Text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy. The battle for free speech is the battle for our future, and Wealth Protection Research ensures that the ideas capable of shaping our financial well-being are available to all of us who want to hear them. So don't wait. Grab your free report right now. Text ideas to 76626 and claim your free copy. This is kind of hilarious. Listen to Lawrence O'Donnell describing Stormy Daniels as she entered the courtroom yesterday. Very, very exotic. It's number 62, Fast Eddie. Listen. Like a novel.
Well, the excitement and anticipation in the room hit a new high at 10:32 a.m. She entered wearing all black, as if on her way to a funeral.
Good.
The loose-fitting, plain black clothing draping from her shoulders to her toes suggested the modesty of a nun. The makeup was minimal, the way she and the other moms in her neighborhood might look when shopping at the local grocery store. The long blonde hair held up with a clip at the back of her head, the way it might be in a utilitarian way while she was doing dishes or checking one of the horseshoes on her horse. She later spoke of so proudly. When she walked by him, her face had the same expressionless, somber look that all the jurors always have when they walk by him.
The fluorescent lighting glistened off her amber skin. Amber, no, I was porcelain skin. That would have been better. Not amber. Matthew Whitaker, probably sketching notes right now, former acting attorney general. That was poetry right there, Mr. Whitaker. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Chris, I have no idea where we're going to go with this conversation after that.
Do you think he was aroused? Was that what was he like? I don't know if he was writing a script for her next film. I'm not sure. What was the point of that little monologue, do you suppose?
Get in the head of Lawrence O'Donnell. This is going to be fun. As I've watched some of the coverage of this trial, there are still a couple honest people on MSNBC and CNN that are actually going to tell you the truth. One, they had MSNBC, I think it was fantastic. They had a former Clinton-appointed federal judge who spoke the truth. Said she was not relevant. I don't know why they put her on the stand, and actually, But then you have the fanboys like Larry. Who's,
I think he was mildly aroused.
Loser.
Yeah, I really do, Matthew Whitaker. I think he was kind of, maybe he's kind of lonely. I don't know. But here, I think to your point, Evan Perez over there at CNN, a lot of honest people don't understand why she's there and, in fact, think she really hurt matters yesterday. Not that any of this is legitimate to begin with, but if you're wild-eyed enough to believe this is legitimate, listen to, there's about a minute, Matt, if you don't mind. Evan Perez, the senior justice correspondent at CNN, his summary of the Stormy Daniels testimony.
The thing that's, I think my one quarrel with that is that I think she may have done damage to the prosecution's case by virtue of the fact that she just couldn't stop saying stuff, and so that's going to backfire on them. I think we know now from some reporting from our colleagues that the cross-examination is going to go longer because they know they now have room to go after her for some of the suggestions she made.
The defense does.
The defense, right? That the encounter was not consensual, which of course is not something that has been really, her position until more recently. So I think that's where it poses a problem.
Sure, I will not back down from this point at all, even in the face of my friend Evan Perez, only because at the center of the case is the allegation of a sexual encounter. Right. Prosecutors have to establish a sexual encounter or else the case goes away. All of the other stuff is critically important, and I think it makes it harder to believe her. But if the prosecutors didn't call her as a witness, it's over. Like, literally, you could file a motion to, the defense could file a motion to throw the case out at that point.
Well, but that's the point. So Matthew Whitaker, that's Evan Perez arguing with the senior legal analyst Elliot Williams. He said, well, you got to call her because you got to establish they had sex. I think Evan Perez is saying they can't even establish that. She's starting to sound like she's torn apart the idea that they've ever been physically intimate.
Yes, and remember, you have to, with a witness, the more they tell their story, it is impossible to tell the same story the same way twice. I mean, it's human nature. You add details, you forget details, you tell a shorter version, you tell a longer version. And she's told this story so many times, one that she's clearly, she's memorized the high points, right? Yeah. But she also, I think, has embellished, again, and nobody even knows if it happened or it didn't. Donald Trump says it didn't happen. I tend to believe him. He says, she's not my type. And so, I mean, it is not, I think at the end of the day, you have to take this witness and say it's just not going to help the prosecution. And I disagree with whoever the other voice with, some random chucklehead on CNN.
Yeah.
But I don't think they had to call her. And certainly if they called her, they could have established a very narrow. Because remember, this is a falsification of documents, and we've talked about this before. But it's important to remember that the only victim, if these documents were inaccurate, if these books and records of Trump, organization were inaccurate, the victim is the owner, which is Donald Trump. So that's point one, and then point two is then they try to do this. I guess they've concluded it's an interference or a conspiracy to interfere with an election, a state claim under New York law, which does not apply to presidential elections because presidential elections are regulated exclusively by the federal government. And so I just, this whole case, and I just have to keep saying this because it's the foundational principle, which the whole trial is based on, is kind of a set of facts in looking for some legal basis to make it illegal. And I'm sure if you're on the jury, Chris, you're thinking, what are they trying to tell me? What is this story? There was people telling me how they, had limited boxes to categorize these expenses. Now we're hearing from Stormy Daniels with these completely lurid and salacious, story. I'm sure they're just scratching their head trying to figure out what this case is about.
Matthew Whitaker is the former acting attorney general. He's co-chair of the Center for Law and Justice at the America First Policy Institute. What is the likelihood that they get at least one juror not to go along with this? I mean, I know it's a New York jury. I don't know. Everybody that we've talked to with Trump's legal team and people that have been in the room, I think they all kind of feel like it's a fait accompli. These people are they come in hardwired to hate Trump. I don't know if you're there or not. Do you think they can get one peeled off?
Obviously, I'm looking at those two lawyers who are going to be acting like super jurors. The other 10 are going to look to them to help them figure out the law, to help them kind of, was that fact stricken? Was it allowed in? I think you really have a jury of two. In my experience, I've never put a lawyer on a jury. I've never had a jury pool that I think even had more than one juror in it, one potential juror in it that was a lawyer. So all that to be said, I think you're, kind of hoping that one of those two people see through kind of this, magic trick that Alvin Bragg and his team of left-wing, crazies is trying to put together.
It's just, you said it, and I keep saying it. Here's my point. I say it over and over and over again. The whole thing is based on something the federal government, Biden's federal government, has already investigated and said there was no issue over. The FEC has investigated this stupid payment and said it's not a thing. I don't know why we're even here. Isn't that the singular defense? Or is there more that I'm missing?
Yes, and the Southern District of New York at the Department of Justice also looked at this set of facts and decided that no crime was there. it all emanates, if we're going to be honest, it all emanates from really one person, and that's Michael Cohen, who hates the president, and also you had this witness who's going to be back on the stand today, Stormy Daniels, who said that she hates Donald Trump. And if I'm in the jury, I just think to myself, wow, we have, the main witnesses here for the government hate Donald Trump. I wonder if that's affecting what they're saying, especially since they're both liars and have, not been consistent on the facts of this case.
Let me ask you a couple of other legal notes while I have you. The Biden administration has announced that if they go into Rafah, if Israel goes into Rafah, they will withhold what is my understanding and what I've seen several people from the Wall Street Journal, Tom Cotton today suggests it, Newt Gingrich has suggested it. He is suggesting he will withhold congressionally mandated, congressionally authorized munitions to Israel. A president can't do that. Tom Cotton said this morning the House should move to impeach him if he does it. Agree?
Well, isn't this kind of like the perfect phone call a little bit? It is beyond conscionable that we went through, what happened a couple of weeks ago to approve all the money to go to Ukraine, the money for Israel, which was kind of like the sugar on a really nasty bill, together with some money for Taiwan, and then the piece that got some people to vote for it that didn't want to otherwise vote for it and had to hold their nose to vote for the whole package, ultimately is withheld. Yeah, I mean, it's unconstitutional. It's not the way it's supposed to work. The president doesn't have, in my mind, understanding kind of the separation of powers and the way the constitutional system is supposed to work. The president doesn't have that ability to withhold the congressionally authorized and legal arms that should be transferred. But this is Joe Biden trying to win Michigan.
Yeah,
that's all it is. It's politically calculated, and it's quite terrible. And while we're on this topic, I think it's important to understand that the day before he was at the Holocaust Museum saying that we are sort of side by side standing with Israel, we're their number one ally, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next day he says, oh yeah, we're not going to give them what they need to prosecute this war.
That's right. It's worth remembering that he gave a big speech about. In fact, could we play a clip of it just to remind people what Biden said at the Holocaust Remembrance Day? Here's a little bit.
Now, here we are, not 75 years later, but just 7.5 months later, and people are already forgetting. They're already forgetting that Hamas unleashed this terror. It was Hamas that brutalized Israelis. It was Hamas who took and continues to hold hostages. I have not forgotten, nor have you, and we will not forget.
24 hours later in Wisconsin, give me number 66.
We've held up the weapons. We've held up the one shipment that, as an old shipment, was designed. We've held that up.
I mean, in 24 hours, Matthew Whitaker, I feel like I've hit my head.
Well, I mean, your team's amazing. They can pull those things up like that. And second, it is just, to me, a really cold political calculation that really has no place. I mean, we either stand with Israel or we don't. We either help them win this war against violent terrorists that in the kind of dawn's early light went in and murdered about 1,200 citizens. Currently hold 5 American citizens hostage with no desire to release those. They're using them as human shields. I just think the whole thing just seems like such a crass political calculation that I hope Joe Biden should suffer politically for these types of decisions.
One last one. That's Judge Cannon down there in Florida. She says she's basically pumped the brakes on going forward at all on this documents thing because there's too much up in the air. And she's basically like, I'm not rushing this thing. Agree with her decision. And I've read reports that Jack Smith, I don't quite know how it works. Maybe you can tell me from inside DOJ, that Jack Smith and others have been threatening to somehow, I don't understand, remove her from this, or there's obvious consternation there. She's the one that's not playing ball
it appears, with the Biden Justice Department. So what do you know of her and what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, Judge Cannon's just doing, I'm sure, her best to do this case right. There's classified information, dealing with some of what's called SEPA, which is sort of the laws that deal with how to admit and how to review and how to, kind of exchange classified information. Jack Smith chose to put in those almost 36 counts involving individual documents and individual violations. And so, the process to, under SEPA is a very complicated process. I've had those cases before when I was U.S. attorney. They do not move quickly. The other thing that I think is what's got Jack Smith apoplectic, and because he's worried, quite frankly, and doesn't want this, is the selective prosecution motion that has been filed by the president, I think appropriately, that essentially compares and contrasts Mike Pence and President Biden, then Vice President Biden, that Rob Hur investigated, and what they're doing now with Donald Trump. And I think that is a legitimate inquiry by a judge to figure out, are people equal under the law, or are we just, if your name's Donald Trump, then you get prosecuted by the federal government and everybody else gets to walk?
We are always grateful for your analysis, Matthew Whitaker, former acting attorney general, great resource and friend of the show. He's now at the America First Policy Institute as the co-chair for the Center for Law and Justice. And if President Trump is successful, I have a very funny feeling we will see Matthew Whitaker involved in another Trump administration. Hey, Mike Lindell and MyPillow, you know the name. 20 years they've been singing the jingle on Fox News and on the radio. And it's no secret that Mike and the company have come under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attack. Big box stores have tossed MyPillow from their stores. Even the online retailers now won't sell MyPillow products. And who does that hurt, really? I mean, yeah, I understand they don't like Mike's position on the election or whatever, but Mike employs hundreds of Americans, hundreds of Minnesotans who make great products. If you know the MyPillow products, I sleep on them every night. So does my dog, Dean. They're great products. And he wants to sell them to you at unbelievable prices, by the way, but they're backed with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee, and most importantly, again, they're made here in the United States. So, it's not something he's asking me to say. It's just something I'd like to remind you of, that a guy who has an opinion, who happens to own a very successful American company and employs a lot of Americans who make great American products that a lot of you have bought and owned or are looking to buy and own. I just want you to know that while he takes it on the chin a lot out there for having the positions he has, he wants to keep his employees busy. He wants to keep the company moving along, and so he's passing on huge, huge savings to you in what he's calling the $25 extravaganza. Getting the word out, I want to invite you to check out this $25 extravaganza today. 2 multi-pack MyPillows, just $25. MyPillow sandals, just $25. I'm looking at the list of these deals right now. 6-pack towel set, just $25. 6-pack of towels, $25. And the MyPillows with the new Giza fabric, just $25. And here's the thing, if you order any or all of this stuff, if you exceed $75 with your order, he ships it to you for free. So free shipping on anything $75 or over. And look, with all those deals and so many more at just $25 a piece, I think you'll be very, very pleased with not just the quality, but the price point and the free shipping. It's MyPillow.com. I hope you'll use the promo code ChrisPodcast. MyPillow.com, ChrisPodcast, to take advantage of all these savings. Get that free shipping over $75. Or call 800-932-5056. Great operators, American-based operators. You can call and say, hey, I'm with you. And hang in there. 800-932-5056. Don't forget the promo code ChrisPodcast. It lets them know you listen, which I appreciate, but more importantly, get you that deal. MyPillow.com or 800-932-5056. Promo code ChrisPodcast. Some of you know this name. Some of you don't know this name. So I'm mindful that not everybody's going to appreciate this as much as some in the audience. There's a guy out there named Michael Smerconish. Fast Eddie's already burying his head. Oh, don't do this, Stigall. Now, listen, I'll start by saying my only interactions with Michael Smerconish have never been anything but pleasant, okay? I have nothing, I have no personal axe or grudge to grind on a personal level with Michael. I don't I don't know him well. I have had 2 or 3 personal interactions with him, and he's been nothing but charitable and kind to me, personally, face to face. When I came to Philadelphia, it was his morning show that I took over. I took over the time slot. I did not know Michael at all. In fact, I'd never heard of him. I was doing radio halfway across the country in another city. I didn't know Michael Smerconish. Literally just never heard of him. No insult, just didn't know. But in Philadelphia, I guess he was a pretty big deal. And if you ask him, he still is. And so when I got the opportunity to come host my first morning show in Philadelphia, there were a number of people that got next to me and said, oh, now you're going to take the Michael Smerconish slot. Are you ready for that? Can you? I mean, people really built this up fast, Eddie, like I was taking over for Elvis or something. You know, never mind that it was Philadelphia and I was an outsider. That was enough. But, Michael Smerconish. Okay. All right. Now, the only thing that I knew by the time that I got to Philadelphia was that I was taking this time slot from a guy who did finally come across my desk halfway across the country in the 2008 election. John McCain versus Barack Obama. For those of you that don't know this story, many of you in the Philadelphia area do. Those of you who don't, I'll cut to the chase. Michael had been, I think, largely considered a very conservative talk show host up to that point in 2008. True?
Yes, sir.
And then one day, Michael made international news for himself. And it's the first time I'd ever heard his name in my life. In my industry, everybody was talking about this conservative talk show host who decided the country needed Barack Obama. And the splashy headline all over the country was conservative talk show host endorses Barack Obama. Fast forward to today. Michael has subsequently left the talk radio scene entirely, at least traditional broadcast media. He's now on Sirius satellite radio, and he does some show on CNN that I don't know where it is. I really don't. If you told me to point you to it right now, I'm not sure what time of day it's on. I think it's on the weekends. I don't know. And I don't know where you find him on Sirius XM either. I don't know. Again, not insulting. I just don't know. Michael has written several books. He'd love to tell you about it and remind you of all of them. Around Philadelphia, Michael is still beloved in all the mainline cocktail parties. He's thought of as quite a celebrity, both to many on the left and also in his own mind. After Michael left the talk radio station that I was hired to do the morning show, Michael went out on a tour trashing conservative talk radio, effectively, calling us all carnival barkers and liars. And this is where my axe began to grind with Michael. Not personally. Mind you, I have no negative feelings about him personally. This is all professional. Michael got in bed with CNN and started, I think he wrote a book, if memory serves, and then started to tour the country. He would go on Bill Maher's show, and he would talk about how all of us as conservatives, true conservatives behind microphones who didn't endorse Barack Obama and have never abandoned our conservatism, how we're all liars. We're basically liars, and we're making this whole thing up. We don't believe what we're saying. We're just doing it to rile you up and whip you up. And quietly when we go home, we really, we think like he does. All for show. Now, that insults not just me, but every one of my colleagues I respect and every one of the people that work. That insults Fast Eddie. That insults everybody that's ever produced a show for me, anybody that screened calls for me. I've worked with dozens and dozens of people over my talk radio career. And I'm not saying all of them liked me, but I'd like to believe that all of them believed that I believed and mean what I say when I say it. That I'm not faking my way through this. That really offended me. But he has dined out on being he's the Joe Scarborough of talk radio, okay? He's the former conservative who's now so enlightened and smart that he can see both sides. Now he's Mr. I'm stuck in the middle with you, Steelers wheel crap. I mean, it's just garbage. He's a liberal. He's a liberal. He's a mainline leftist. And he likes to go to cocktail parties on the main line, and he likes to be thought of well at Cologne and Cufflink functions, and he likes to be, friends with the guy who runs Comcast and the guy that runs my former employer. He wants to be their friends more than he cares about principles in politics. And most of all, he has to be the smartest guy in the room at all times. No matter who's in the room, he's the smartest and he's the most reasonable, right? He's so reasonable that he's been invited multiple times to speak at graduation functions all over Pennsylvania, specifically his beloved Philadelphia, where he still lives, I guess. So he's been, and he'll tell you, he's been invited to speak at many, many commencements over the years because, again, he's so thoughtful and important. Deans and leaders of academe all think he's just genius. Doesn't this speak volumes already? Like, you kind of know where we're going here, I think. Academia loves him, and they invite him to speak. And he's written many books, leather-bound books. Silhouettes on the Pillow, profiles in the Washington Post. I mean, ever since he endorsed Obama. Loves him. Until last week. What happened last week, Fast Eddie?
Oh, with the protests, the college protests on campuses?
Yeah. Anti-Semitism was busting out all over.
Mm-hmm.
The colleges started roiling and burning. Dickinson College was the latest campus to invite Michael to give a commencement address. And Dickinson College in January invited him and then sent him a letter last week and rescinded the invitation. Now, I guess for a guy like Michael, there's just nothing more painful than academia rejecting him. And so he took time on his show yesterday to address this. I thought you'd maybe enjoy hearing a couple of minutes of it. So let's listen in.
Mike, since 1990. Today, and for the last 11 years, I am responsible for 15 live hours of radio per week on Sirius XM. And last month, I celebrated my 10-year anniversary as the host of my own program on CNN. As Malcolm Gladwell might say,
what that has to do with anything,
I've invested my 10,000 hours. I've always viewed my access to the airwaves as a privilege. Admittedly, I've said plenty of foolish things over the years, but none with animus.
No.
My record contains no hate.
No
prejudice.
Oh.
If the case were otherwise, you'd know it. Which is why I find the Dickinson decision so troubling and chilling. Before there was any hint of controversy at Dickinson, in both my SiriusXM and CNN advocacy, I condemned the decision by the University of Southern California to cancel the planned speech by its valedictorian, who happened to be Muslim, after some of her social media postings drew attention.
Really?
We're doing our youth, future leaders, and nation a disservice if the civil, deliberative speech of the type I would have delivered at Dickinson is now unwelcome because it's easier to yield to the uninformed than to invest the time necessary to make reasoned decisions.
All right, that's enough. Mr. Smirkanish, the uninformed of which you speak, yielding to the uninformed, do you know who they are? Do you know who's targeting you? By the way, they're coming after him about a book he wrote back after 9/11. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but suffice to say, some people thought he was racist-y. And they decided they can't have a racist white supremacist speaking at Dickinson College, and so the president sheepishly said, you're a distraction, we can't have you. This upset him very much, so he gave about a 20-minute testimony. That's a chunk of it. And he says, we can't yield to the uninformed. Sir, who are the uninformed? Who's coming after you exactly? Conservatives? Anybody in your audience that you betrayed when I got to town and have heard for years and years and years and years from people who were loyal to you for years and then felt completely betrayed when you endorsed what we now know, is the most radical human being to ever occupy the presidency, who introduced this Marxism, Mr. Smerconish, through which we're living right now. You are the victim of your own enlightenment. You were hoisted by your own petard, sir. That's the irony here. You were so smart and so enlightened and so reasonable 20 years ago. You are now reaping what you've sown. No conservative called for you to be thrown off the campus of Dickinson College, Mr. Smerconish. The left came after you. The left you decided to start flirting with, the left that you've gotten into bed with to make your money and sell your books and do your little show on TV, the left that you so coveted to look like you were the smartest guy in the room has now come for you, sir. Whereas we, as conservatives, and the people that were loyal to you for so many years as conservatives, we never left our post. We never left our position. We never wavered, and we would never call for the silencing of speech. We would never call for somebody to be canceled or thrown off a podium to speak. That's the left, sir. And so I guess I just find it interesting that today Michael Smerconish, who is so very proud of how very reasonable he is and how he has a history of no hate and no prejudice. He is sincere in all that he does, unlike those bloviating, lying, carnival barker conservative talk show hosts. He's the smartest guy in every room. No hate, no prejudice, and his record shows it. And he's upset that he's been canceled. Well, Michael, how enlightened are you now? How smart are you now? How sincere are we conservatives now? Who amongst us as conservative talk show hosts have called for your silencing or your canceling or pulling you off the air? Even when you endorsed Obama, and it was outrageous then, it's certainly outrageous now in the rearview mirror. You got behind and betrayed an audience. You endorsed a guy that has brought us to this point. I mean, it really is ironic. You walked a professional plank and ushered in an era that has come for your own career. Things don't look so bad over here on the right side of the pond now, do they, Michael? Sorry it happened to you. It shouldn't. I agree. I think it's abhorrent that they cancel your speech. But that's what happens when you flirt with the left. That's what happens when you tolerate the left. That's what happens when you say, oh, let's hear them out. You either fight to defeat them wherever it's found, or you get in bed with them, as you have, and then you wait for them to come for you, because they will. None of us will be spared by this at the end of the day. This audience, I, and so many of my colleagues who do this for a living, we all understand we're in a war for the future of the country. You're in a war, I guess, over your bank account. I don't know. So anyway, all right, I did it. Maybe I shouldn't have done it, but I don't regret it. It has to be said. I'm sorry. It brings me no joy. Sincerely, I don't want anybody canceled. I hate it. I think it's awful, but what does he expect?
The Chris DeGaulle Show Podcast.